I held these up before Congress and said, you're witnessing America's new slave trade.
So Jason, these wristbands, you brought them from the border?
Yeah, these are specifically from Roma, Texas, which sits on the U.S. side just across from a plaza known as Miguel Alemán. It's one of the most violent regions along the southwest border. And the reason for that is because that is ground zero where Cartel de Golfo is in control, also known as CDG, and where the Los Zetas, today known as Cartel del Noreste, are battling for control. But this is also where CDG began putting wristbands on men, women, and children. And what you're seeing here really represents a process. Just as Border Patrol was overwhelmed with the amount of people that began influxing into the country in January and February of 2021, so was the cartels. But Cartel de Golfo and their alien smuggling organization specifically came up with this as a process. And as they were being overwhelmed with people, they began first putting them in stash houses. Once you come into a stash house, the way it works is they get all of your PII data, known as your personal identifying information. Once you give them enough of their family and the country of origin where they come from, along with where they're going in the United States, a payment is agreed upon. When that happens, you see this number right here? Mm-hmm. That number goes into their database. And each one of these represent a different alien smuggling organization directly working for Cartel de Golfo. Now, they're the only cartel that does this on the southwest border. But what you're seeing and what you're holding here is America's new slave trade. And I truly mean that, because this represents an adjustment from the smuggling of a person to the trafficking of a person. And what's the difference? If you smuggle someone from point A to point B, there's an agreement made that you are going to pay that smuggler so much to get you from here to here. Now, as soon as you get here, that agreement's over. You go on your way in the United States or wherever, and they go back to doing what they do. Here it is different, because what the cartels realized is that people are the gift that keeps giving. When I first broke this story, if you were a Mexican citizen, it was $2,500 just across the river. And in many areas, the river is as wide as your office here. If you were Central American, it was $3,000. And if you were Chinese, $5,000. And if you were Russian or Middle Eastern, $9,000, just across the Rio Grande River. And then they would put this wristband on you, and this number went into their database. And what these represent, these are very important, is they represent what goes on children, because it's hard for your audience to probably really grasp this, but men, women, and children are a commodity to the cartels. They are the gift that keeps giving.
How?
Because you can tell that commodity what to do. You can tell it to cross the river. You can tell it to move drugs. You can tell it to go into sex trafficking. Here's where the real problem is. All of these people are having to pay back a fee. They've been allowed to cross into the United States after they agree upon the amount of money that they're going to pay to the cartels. As soon as they get to the U.S. side, they're crossed via a raft by the Cartel de Golfo. And as soon as they get to the U.S. side, they break that wristband as they're instructed. And these litter the ground by the hundreds of thousands. Then they go and they're turned over to Border Patrol, and they are sent throughout the nation. And with that, a virus of human trafficking, because this is debt bondage. And what's the difference? When you think of human trafficking, most think of commercial sex. You really have three different forms of human trafficking. You have commercial sex, you have forced labor, and what we are talking about, debt bondage, meaning that these people are now in our country. They're here legally, whether we agree with it or not, under the current administration's processes and policies, but yet indebted to a criminal organization who really should be a terrorist organization in a foreign country. We have never been here before.
What kind of debt do they owe them? Financial debt?
Financial debt, correct. All because they crossed a river. Mm-hmm. It's a made-up debt.
Are these different businesses, as in different cartels that have been capitalizing over this open border situation? So each color is a different cartel?
It's a great question. No, each one is a different alien smuggling organization that works under the umbrella of Cartel de Golfo, specifically known as CDG. And the reason you have different colors is so you know where they're crossing and which alien smuggling organization. That right there tells me where they crossed.
How do the cartels then track the people who own them?
There you go. So you see this number?
Okay.
That number goes in the database, and did the paycheck come in? See, in the beginning, and it's a great question, they have always had in our country throughout the nation the logistics for drugs, but they didn't have this. So when these people started crossing the U.S., they began putting their operatives in with them. And then We sent them all over the country, and yet these people pay back to these operatives in these different cities and counties all over the nation now, repaying the debt.
So
and if
these
they don't
people
pay
memorize their numbers?
no, the cartel knows it. It's in their database, and that's how they know when they miss a payment. Now, let's say they don't want to pay, or let's say they don't pay.
Right.
Well, then they have their family and their country of origin to hold accountable, because before they gave them that wristband, they called them and said, do you know Jaeson Jones? Oh, you do? How do you know him? Really?
Mm-hmm.
And who are you? You're his mom? Is this your phone number? What's your address? They validate everything.
Right, and these people know that, and so they're afraid about their loved ones back at home.
That's exactly right. And this is the other problem. So now let's talk about the secondary and third impacts. These people, many of them don't have skill sets. So if you're a woman, you're going to go into commercial sex to repay this debt. If you're a man, most likely you are going to be involved in human smuggling. You're going to be involved in drug trafficking. Whatever you've got to do to pay back this debt so that your loved ones back where you come from and here are not accountable for losing and not paying that debt. I'll tell you a great story. A case out of Houston, Texas. A woman who was 7 months pregnant who had crossed. She was in debt to Cartel de Golfo. She wore one of these wristbands. She was being forced into commercial sex in Houston. Well, she was in pain one day because she's 7 months pregnant, right? So she said, look, I can't come in. I'm in pain. They said, no problem. Your debt is now completely started over. You see, at a whim. They can keep you paying forever. When this gets out and all the American public realizes, and through the natural course of time, this will come out, you are going to see an epidemic of trafficking like this country has never seen. And I will say it again and again, that what you are seeing here on your desk and in my hands, this is America's new slave trade.
Absolutely evil. That's
It is,
evidence
and
of
you
terrorism.
feel it. You feel the evil. It is evil. You can see their names
Right,
written on the
this is
back.
a little child. A little child.
I have seen that on a 10-day-old child, wrapped around that little hand 3 and 4 times.